welcome to another episode of Frame and Reference. I'm your host, Kenny McMillan, and you're listening to episode 166 with Trevor Roach, DP of City of Dreams. Enjoy.
I've been screaming about that for on this fucking podcast about just not everything needs to be a $1 billion return. Yeah. And all the movies that everyone looks back. I also think the internet has stunted everyone's memory of because we're all kind of stuck in when right before the internet started. We're that was the good times, whatever, 1999 or maybe even 2008. Anything after that all seems to be 1 year.
Yeah. Yeah. Luckily our industry's gone through a lot over the last 100+ years. I do think this is with social media and the internet, this is probably the most, I don't know, it's a crossroads, right? It could go two different ways. We could see the die out of long form media and a slow death where it's just we're all developing ADHD and can only watch things for 45 seconds. I don't know.
See, I was just talking about this to somebody yesterday, but I don't actually think everyone has short attention spans, and we're coming up against that. I think that the film and television industry hasn't created anything compelling enough to keep people to come back, or distributed it in such a way that entices people to want, because streaming, it'll always be there. So I produce a live event, a stand-up comedy show, and I have for years.
You based in LA?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oh, where do you perform?
I just produce it, but it's
it's in
Santa Monica.
Okay. Oh, okay, nice.
That's
I'm on the east side, so
Thursday. Oh yeah.
I'll have to check it out sometime. Where's it at?
Illusion Magic Lounge.
Okay, yeah, I've heard of it. We'll have to check it out sometime.
Yeah, dude.
I'm always there. I'm going to UCB once or twice a month, since it's literally a 10-minute drive from me. So yeah, I'm always all about the comedy shows. We're so lucky out here.
Yeah, we used to do it in downtown, but no one wanted to go to downtown, regardless of where they were in the. And we were in a nice part of downtown too, but people were just no.
I know, it's downtown actually has its charms. It's just I think if we were a lot of other stuff too.
Yeah, I was about to say if we were in the arts district, it might be different, but even that is right butted up against Skid Row, which is wild.
It is such a juxtaposition. But I guess that's what makes LA.
Yeah. But anyway, so the thing about doing the comedy show is that I've noticed is when it's an event, the first time, if we go on a break, that first show back always hits, right? If we have a massive comic on there and we spend 2 weeks advertising it, that always hits. But when we just say it's every other week, then things go down. I think the same is true with streaming, right? It's always going to be there. It's always online. And on top of that, now we're having these 6-episode seasons where the next season doesn't show up for 3 years, or it might get canceled.
Yeah.
And you just never know. So I think we're not incentivizing people to watch.
No, you're right. Content. You binge something and then you forget about it. There was the beauty of you go back and watch something like The West Wing.
Right.
20 episodes, and you not only were they pieced out by week, so you had to kind of it was the water cooler chat. Yeah. But also you got time to live and grow with the characters.
Right.
You got to kind of make them your friends or enemies or whatever else, and that's what a relationship is. It takes a while to develop. If you're just smushing it into a straight, just stay up all night, watch, binge, it's almost like a one-night stand, it's kind of, you just move on. It's I don't know.
Well, and what's funny is the streamers know that shows like that are they have the metrics to see, people watch Friends and The Office and The West Wing 1,000,000 times over, but they don't go make that. They go make whatever fucking chat GPT tells them to, or whatever.
Yeah, it means actual work, which God forbid we actually do.
Right. Dude, I'm I was supposed to interview someone yesterday, but she had to scooch forward. But anyway, I'm fascinated by the disdain that people seem to have towards artists. When you're talking about, God forbid we do any work, like we create AI that's supposed to automate tasks, and the first thing we do is automate art, which is like comes naturally to humans. You know what doesn't? Fucking fast food.
Yeah.
Not saying that fast food workers like don't deserve jobs. I'm just saying like we could automate that.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
In a perfect world, create a I don't know, universal basic income or something where those menial jobs get automated, and then those people are given the time and space to make art. Instead, we've done it the other way.
Dude, I had some friends that they come from like the pharmaceutical background, so very analytical and science based, and I kind of introduced them. We were all chatting about Gemini. I think that's Google's
not so great. Yeah, I have it on my phone.
Yeah,
it's not good.
But no, it does some things, but they were, that for them that aren't really necessarily always tapping into the creative side of their brain, they were blown away by it. Even if like every single like example that they were kind of testing was almost the exact same thing, just slight variations. Like,
right.
For them, that's like a breath of creativity that they haven't experienced. But for us creatives, it's not creative. It's just regurgitating. It's stealing. It's you could be the South Park ticker in our drops, but I mean, yeah, it's
in
terrifying.
The argument that I've heard, which I understand but don't agree with, is like, oh, this is akin to accessibility. People who whatever couldn't draw now can create things in their minds, and I'm like, meh. First of all, there have been artists with like no arms who have still created art. Like that's not.
Oh yeah.
But also, it's not that you can't draw. It's that, well, there's two ways. You haven't learned to. You can learn to do almost anything. Like I don't believe this. Like I just can't. It's like, well, practice. I can't hit a 95 mile an hour four seam fastball, but if I practiced enough, I probably might be able to get a piece of it.
Yeah.
Or you aren't, kind of what I was saying earlier. You're not given enough time to practice, which is a failure of society, not necessarily of one's own. But either way, that doesn't mean that, like I said, like humans are inherently creative. You get a rush when you make something. And to give that dopamine away for free, basically, on the backs of other people's art isn't healthy, let alone like, not safe. What am I trying to say? Like ethical,
No, absolutely not. I mean, creativity I think is like brought out by limitations. I mean, and if you have no limitations, it's just regurgitated crap. I mean, it's partly why I'm not as afraid of, especially when it comes to like filmmaking AI, just because, okay, great, someday an audience member will be able to mash up their dream scenario of Star Wars and Star Trek into okay, but that novelty is going to wear off. I mean, it's already wearing off with what feels like AI with the Star Wars TV shows. I mean, it's like these bland, not taking risk stories. I mean, that's what's killing it. Like that's what we should be afraid of. I mean, I think AI is really interesting to potentially develop like period piece extension backdrops, like using archival footage for building out like a 1950s Los Angeles street for a like a film noir. Or something like that, where you don't maybe like a small independent film doesn't necessarily have the entire budget to build out a full-on street, or they don't have the VFX ability to build out all these VFX. They can potentially use archival footage, have it manipulated into kind of something close to what they want. That I find interesting. I mean, I still see the ethical issues with it, but if you use it as a tool and not so much as like an idea that this is going to replace the creative artist, maybe we can use it.
Well, but that also, I think I 100% agree with you. But also, I feel like everyone gets a little over their skis about it because it's like, oh, now I can do anything. And it's like, okay, do you have an idea?
Yep.
And oftentimes the answer is no. They're just the idea of being able to make something is very exciting. And it's like, if you really did, in my head, need to create that 1950s backdrop, you could just do, if you have no budget, a lock-off shot and then take the still into into Photoshop, generate, make the thing and just do a set extension, like a matte painting, basically.
Yeah.
And that's been you've been able to do that forever, but you didn't make your short film, did you?
Yeah. Yeah.
I just can't yet. There's a lot of I can't, and it's like I'm over. I can't.
Yeah, I mean, I got my first. No, but
I think it's something in the water that makes people feel that way. You know?
Yeah,
what I mean?
yeah. I mean, we've had different tools in tech that have said they're going to kill X and Y for a long time, and I do think there's going to be a shift. Don't get me wrong, it already is, but creative human thought is a commodity that hopefully never is going to go away. I mean, or at least not in our lifetimes. I mean, the ability, like original content, man. I hate that I say.
I know they've trained us to say it.
yeah, it's scary. It's scary, but creative stories. I mean, creative original stories that hit your gut. Those are always going to be, I think, what garner the most sustainability. And I mean, you're not going to go to Burger King if you're looking for, this is maybe pretentious, but like you're not going to go to Burger King if you're looking for a Michelin star restaurant meal.
Right.
Like these specialties are going to still be there, but I think that we're seeing that in cinematography though. I mean, I'm going back to kind of I'm somebody that I'm noticing it a trend, and it's been a trend for a bit, where we're seeing the camera and lighting and particular lenses sometimes that are just because we as cinematographers feel like we need to stand out.
Sure. You mean like constantly using like the Mini plus Cook S4 combo, or like
or like probe lenses, just constantly, the probe gag, or just like the camera's always moving, or the camera's doing gag tricks. And especially coming from more of a narrative background, like when I'm seeing these kind of tricks implemented in narrative, I mean, if it's done appropriately to tell the story, it's great. But it's kind of I've noticed it more and more of like this meta-ness where the cinematography almost sometimes overtakes the story nowadays, just because we just have so many tools. We have so many tools that are just being implemented, and sometimes they're not to service the story. They're just to be cool.
Well, and I don't know why, but it kind of reminds me, yesterday we were watching the Dodgers game, and my buddy, they kept seeing how they're like Shohei Ohtani has kind of he'll chase anything, and he has kind of a blind spot in his upper inside. And it used to be that as a pitcher, you would have to learn that. And now we have analytics like crazy that just, the next day some computers spit out every pitch you should throw and where to throw it to make sure he doesn't hit, right?
Yeah.
And my buddy was like, that's kind of made baseball boring recently because everything is optimized. And just the existence of umpires means that baseball is not an optimized game. That's kind of the point.
Yeah.
And I feel kind of the same to your point about cinematography, getting too flashy. It's like, we know that this combination looks good and makes clients happy, so we're just going to hammer that button because we've seen enough of it. Whereas before, you might have to, make mistakes. There's just no room to make mistakes, and I think that's your point earlier. It's like the film industry is so risk averse.
Yeah,
all of, at least in America, we're just so risk averse right now for multiple reasons. That the fun of creativity is kind of tamped down because it needs to be a winner every time. And that can come down to cinematography where it's like, oh, what would be cool is, what if we shoot this on film? They're like, no, that's expensive. And what if it breaks or something like that? I don't know.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No, the amount of times that I mean, I own an SR too. So any opportunity I can get to shoot on film, I will. But yeah, it's a scary proposition the further and further we get into this digital world to shoot on film, because I mean, God forbid we do rehearsals. I mean, God forbid we do blocking, which I think is beyond just shooting the rehearsal. I think the lack of proper blocking nowadays is probably the biggest detriment to cinematography today, because then cinematographers, going back to that idea, we're making up for it in flashy shots. We're making up for it in special lenses where if you, especially in the narrative, this is a little different, obviously, for commercials, music videos, things like that. But like when you give the time for the actors to perform an authentic and worked out performance, and you find exactly where the camera's meant to be for that said performance, it's just going to feel so much more cohesive than a really beautiful 50-50 wide master and then some really beautiful close-ups. And I'm guilty of doing it too. So I don't want to say like I'm above it, but because I get it for time's sake. But there is something that working through a scene on the day is so special, and I think digital's really cut us from that, sadly.
Yeah, yeah. I feel,
I mean, we got to move faster, but
yeah, I mean, in my head, it's like digital is just one nail in that coffin where it's, budgets are constrained, or you're spending money in weird spots that, like your point about $5 to $10 million films. Now it would be like 8 million is going to go to one star, and then 2 million for everyone else. So there's just no time. But you can tell when you watch. I just saw that like the other day, me and my girlfriend were watching something, and I was like, I can tell they didn't rehearse this. This is take 2.
Mm-hmm.
And then they moved on. This person does not believe the words that they're saying. They're just saying them. And it's so frustrating. I wish I didn't know as much about filmmaking as I do, because then maybe I could just be like, oh, interesting. But instead I can see the actor going, I just read my sides 10 minutes ago.
You see it a lot in like episodic TV today, which I mean, I get to a point. They're on a tight shooting schedule, yet they're like, I'm watching with my girlfriend Citadel right now.
Oh, sure.
Gorgeous show. But I even noticed it in Fallout earlier this year. Just like gorgeous show, but still there's a lot of their shots are 50-50 master or wide master, then 50-50 close up, because they still got to pump out the scenes. And so how do they make up for it to make it feel interesting? We start, I don't know, framing for some reason, short sighting, or even if it doesn't necessarily fit to the story, because it has to feel different. It has to have a punch. Like we feel like we have to justify our shot, when I mean, I think the beauty of like really well done cinematography is it just blends with the story. That's
the whole thing that I think is the hardest. Like part of my job is education to a degree, writing for Pro Video Coalition and stuff like that. And I find that the one thing that even on like Reddit or whatever that students or people starting out keep asking once they get past all the technical jargon is like, how do I learn composition? And they don't know to ask that. They ask things that sound, that rhyme with it, if you know what you're looking for, basically, if that makes any sense. And it's the one thing you can't teach, because the second you get a book, what's this thing called? Master Shots? That cinematography book.
I literally can see them up on myself right here. Yeah, I've got volume 1 and 2.
Yeah, me too. And it's like you go through it once and you go, okay, got it. Because it doesn't teach you, it doesn't. It's good to know those exist, but it's not like teaching you the language necessarily. It's teaching you the words, but not the language, And I have found more and more, it's like good composition, once you get past those books, is way more about feeling. I've said it a million times. I got to make a t-shirt that says technically correct is or whatever. Emotionally correct is better than technically correct. Yeah. And that might involve, you know what happened the other day? I was shooting an ad and we went to, there's a scene where part of the scene where this guy walks into an RV and it's like there's a bunch of blue smoke coming out of it. It's this cool thing. And we set up the tripod and we hadn't locked down the head so that it just went Dutch. And me and the camera operator stopped and we just went, lock it there. It just looked way more interesting. Like Dutched over hella hard. And we were just like, and then we put it back straight to like actually get the shot. And we were like, no, back to Dutch, which technically is wrong. But it fit the
but it fit the moment.
The thing, yeah.
And
it was an accident.
Well, I mean, happy accidents are great. I've actually, so one of my good friends, you've actually interviewed him, Nick Ramsey.
Oh, I love
We
Nick,
went to
yeah.
chat. Yeah, Nick and I went to Chapman together, and we worked together all the time, helping out each other, and just a great, talented dude. But I lost my train of thought of where I was going with that.
Dutch
Nick Ramsey,
angles,
Dutch
tripod, happy
angles,
accident,
tripods, happy accident.
RB.
Oh man, it's been one of those days. I
I
had two
know.
cups of coffee and yeah, but
I didn't. I'm the opposite. I haven't had any caffeine yet, and it's getting late.
yeah. But yeah, no, it's interesting how um oh man, I just had it and I had it didn't have it again. Anyway,
Well, shout out to Nick either way.
cool. Yeah, shout out to Nick either way. He's
You know, what's funny is
really a good bud.
he shot this music video for a chick named Scout. She has a band called Low Pony, and when I wasn't working, I had to find hobbies, just stuff to do this past year. So it was like started working out. My sister gets floated a lot of like beauty products, but sometimes she'll get sent like colognes, and she's not.
Oh yeah,
they're not for her. That fragrance is for everyone. I've learned. I still
yeah.
I believed it before I learned it, but I agree that like there's no masculine, feminine, fuck all that. Just wear whatever you want. But it's not her scent, so she'll give them to me. So I got into like fragrances and shit and baseball. But the fragrance thing, I guess Scout is like huge on TikTok for being like a perfume person.
Oh.
And so I bought her little sampler pack. And then I made like a video on TikTok about it. And I was like, shout out to Scout. My friend Nick shot a music video for her. And then she goes on my account and she's like, holy shit, shout out to Nick.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, he's everywhere. He hustles. I remember what I was gonna say. With us going to Chapman together, we were the two of our professors were Bill Dill ASC, who's hopped around with AFI and
a lot
USC
of people have
as
named
well.
Bill.
Bill is awesome. Bill's very analytical, very technical. And then our other professor that really inspired me and Nick in particular, and especially me, is Johnny Jensen ASC. So Johnny was similar, but he also came from the emotional standpoint where he was like, you got to feel it in your gut, where that camera moves, where that framing is, as we were saying earlier, like it has to be you. It has to be your voice. And so but I think that takes time. I think like early filmmakers, when they're first starting out, they're just going to replicate what they like, and there's nothing wrong with that. But over time, your voice will be found. Yeah. I mean, when I first started out and learning composition, like you were saying, I would go to, like, I was attending Chapman, and every time I'd get out of class, when I came home at night, I'd make dinner, and then I would watch a film from a cinematographer I liked, especially like when I'm first starting out, like Roger Deakins. Yeah. And you would see what he would do for a close-up, or what he would do for a wide or a medium or a master. And then Chapman had given us a DVD of the students from last year and their cinematography films that were like the best of the year. And so what I would do is, like, I'd have one on my laptop, one on my TV, and I'd freeze frame them, and I'd just see what's the differences between like one of the masters and what students are doing in terms of framing for a close-up. Where's the eye line? How dismissive is it? Like, is the master moving, or is it just on sticks on a wide that's just kind of fell off the truck? And what's the purpose between a really good master that's telling a story versus one that's just there just to show the environment? And so that was my way of really kind of learning how to hopefully improve my composition. But I mean, at the end of the day, it's all about, like, you got to grow into it. You got to know what you like. And sometimes, I mean, if you're an operator and you're not being the DP on something, you have to conform your operating to what the DP or the director wants. Which can be an adjustment if you're kind of used to a certain way. But yeah, it's your voice, and it takes time. It takes time to develop.
Yeah. Do you remember any of those lessons that, like, you learned comparing student films to feature films?
Well, the biggest thing for me, and it's something I like to do in my framing, I'm very aware of, is I like to be almost center, but slightly just off the crosshair. So for like a close-up. So I typically, when I'm framing a close-up, I go right off the crosshairs and then probably match to the cheekbone of the subject, depending on size of the frame, but in the aspect ratio. But the biggest thing in terms of, I'll just stick to close-ups. The biggest thing I noticed was just the eye line. Like the masters and, working professionals that spent that extra time on set, they didn't just throw the camera up and say, all right, this is the close-up. They took the time to cheat the eye line if they needed to bring it closer to the lens and find exactly the place where it's going to be the most emotional impact. And where you see with student films, it's a nice close-up, but it's either just a little dismissive or the eye line's a little off, and you're just not connecting with it in the same necessarily way as the masters are doing it. But yeah, that was something I kind of grew into, and it was always fun. It wasn't perfect, but it helped me hopefully move past the student side of framing as fast as possible, because I knew what they were doing and I wanted to try to do above that, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Well, and I think it kind of goes back to your point about blocking. Like, yeah. The happy medium is you should obviously block and rehearse everything, but then at a certain point you have to ditch some of it to get the shot correct. And I think as students, you plant, if you do any blocking, they're going to stay there. And now you're fighting, how do we get the camera there? It's just take a few steps back. No one, you don't have to be up against the wall or whatever, if no one's going to see the table they're at, you can ditch it. Have them sit on an Apple box. No one cares.
Oh, exactly. Yeah, I was doing I did a short last year where we literally, it was, there's one of the scenes was two characters talking at a table for a long variation of time. And we wanted to get tighter as the conversation progressed, but also with our language, we were predominantly living in the 18 to 35 millimeter focal lengths. And so with that means, you're only going to move the camera so much closer, but you kind of got to clear out the table. And it doesn't matter. You can make these cheats to serve the story and the impact of what that frame's supposed to tell to the best of your ability. But you got to be aware. I mean, you got to be really in tune with the story. I think that's another thing, especially for filmmakers and cinematographers first starting out, is be really in tune with the way you want to tell a story. Read scripts, go to art museums, learn how to tell a story, learn how to tell your own story. Because being in tune with that, your framing's automatically going to be elevated to find the best frame to tell that story. If you're always thinking from a story-centric standpoint, that also means in terms of my opinion, everybody's different. That's the beauty of what this art is. Everybody has different styles and different ways to look at telling the story. But for me, there's reasons why directors sometimes use that take where there's a buzz or the framing slightly off. There's something I famous with that.
That man
absolutely. Yeah.
Nothing. There's no continuity.
Yeah, I mean, when I first started out, and especially in film school, in the first couple of years out, I noticed when there'd be a buzz, you're like, oh man, just and then you take that step back and you realize, oh wait, no, that actually felt really good. There was something in that bump of the camera or that move of the camera that maybe wasn't perfect, but organically it felt right. Yeah. If you trust the director, I mean, you have to trust your leader into telling their story and knowing what's the best thing to tell the story. But yeah, it's why, obviously on set, on the day, you want to try to be as perfect as you can, but there's also, going back to happy accidents, sometimes those mistakes are actually a good mistake. It makes what you're doing feel more authentic depending on the subject matter.
Yeah, it reminds me of I've interviewed a few of David Fincher's DPs, and it does, from what I gather, he wants everything to be technically precise and super efficient so that the actors can have enough room to not be. In other words, all the mechanics, the camera, all this needs to happen flawlessly, but the actors, the reason he does a bunch of takes sometimes is to get something that is a happy accident that you couldn't fake. And so that feels immediately real. I remember I think I said this before, but the woman who plays Ben Affleck's sister in Gone Girl. She's in the bar, and at one point she grabs the phone and she like bobbles the phone before she grabs it, and she gave up on the take. And apparently Fincher was just like, "No, that's what I wanted." Not that he's always looking for actors to start making mistakes, but just an example of when reality takes over and makes it feel real.
Absolutely. I mean, that's sometimes the best takes, but you have to be aware of it. If you're always going for the technical perfect beyond just the perfect composition and shot, but the acting and having to hit these specific beats. I mean, sometimes you need to do that. Again, everything varies project to project, but it goes back to why blocking is so important, because you in rehearsals and multiple takes, if you have the time, I mean, it gives everyone a chance to kind of feel things out and finesse something. I even when it comes to like short films where we're like, or films where I'm shooting on like a dolly, that's pretty precise. But even then, you want to have some wiggle rooms, like maybe put in a rotating head offset on it, so you can make that wiggle room right before. Add a little bit extra move. Have a 2-footer set a track on the truck at all times, or sitting by the dolly at all times, in case you want to move in or pull out a little bit more, just that every little bit. It's just those, but if you don't have that time, it'll just be good enough and you move on. So I think blocking is always paramount. I mean, not for every scene. Some scenes don't need it, but as much of it, but
and it also blocking. To your point about like dollies, that's where I've really enjoyed that aspect of technology, where it's like you used to have to be just, it would take everyone an hour and a half to level off the track perfectly. Now you can get pretty close and then just stabilize it in post. That's one of those fix it and post things that, is tried and true. Saves us a shit ton of time. Yeah. Oh yeah. In Resolve, I'm constantly like, could have put a flag there, didn't. Take it down. No one will notice.
Yeah. I mean, it's why in particular, like in pre-production, not so much, but like it's why I'm very particular in pre-production about knowing what's our budget for the post, in terms of like, are we going to be able to use one of the colors I have? Are we going with somebody else? Like, who is coloring this film? Because I need to know, I can communicate with them that, hey, I need a power window because that floor is screaming. And on the day I factored in adding an extra 5-10 minutes to get a 6x solid up, or just something that can be fixed in 30 seconds in a grade, and giving that director and the talent an opportunity to do maybe 1 or 2 more takes, or maybe we need a few more rehearsals to execute a dolly pullout with the focus, with the speed. And I'd rather focus on that than all these other elements. So but if you don't have that in your back pocket, and this has happened to me before, where those things that you anticipated being able to fix in post, you weren't able to because somebody else had a different intention. So you gotta be, aware of that as well. But it's that balancing act of knowing what is valuable for the time and what is needed on set.
Yeah, I'm lucky enough that a lot of times, most of the time, I'm able to go tell the director, mostly because I work on pretty low budgets, but like, hey, I can color this too. And then I get to fix all my own mistakes. Or, if I know I'm the colorist, then I, like, just as you said, like, I can go, all right, fuck the flag, I'll bring that down later. That's not going to be an issue. And I have I should warn anyone who's just getting started doing this, don't assume you can do it.
Oh yeah,
practice it.
Yeah. If you think it's too hot, you need to know your exposure range. You need to know, just because it doesn't say it's clipping, doesn't mean that's necessarily, depending on the camera you're shooting on, necessarily.
That's the 35, it'll be fine.
Oh yeah, I love shooting on the 35 whenever I can. I mean,
dude, what kind of fucking fairy magic did they put in that thing? It's got like 12 stops of highlights.
It's awesome. I mean, I shot it. I did the first time I worked with a 35. It was on a music video with Ektachrome and some 7219 and a bunch of other Super 16 stocks, and it was a lot of fun to kind of, just do a few quick shots of just seeing comparably the highlight latitude between the two. I still think film has, a little bit more of a natural roll off. It always will be, just being analog like that, but it's pretty damn close. And the color rendition is like that. I mean, above all else, I think that's my favorite part of it. Now, I get in trouble with some of my colors because I like adding the textures that the 35 has.
The built-in like film
I'm like
grains
one
and
of the
shit.
few people.
Yeah, you're the only one,
actually,
dude.
I'm like one of the few people who actually likes it. But maybe it's just because like I want, if that's what I would like the image to be, or I'd like to work, I'd like to shoot with a production light as well, like something that we hopefully designed pre-production, or something that was created for me uh before the shoot, that I know to shoot to that. So when it gets to editorial, there's no surprises, or they're not throwing on a regular 702 light, and the director and the editor and the producers fall in love with that look. And then it's a struggle to bring them back to maybe what was the baseline on the shoot. And so all of a sudden your shadows are a lot higher, or maybe those windows are a little bit more blown out, or the skin tones aren't as rich, and it's something you may or not be able to fight to get back. And so I try to control as much of the image as I can on the shoot within, the parameters of like maybe a flag and things like that. But when it comes to like color, the white balance, the textures, the grittiness that I typically like to do, I like to shoot typically like a stop and a half under, depending on the project.
Which works on
those
art,
are
but certain
yeah,
cameras.
exactly. That's why I prefer to shoot on Alexa, is because I love to shoot under. Even on film though, like, well, on film I'm typically actually the opposite. I take that back. I'm more about a stop and a half over, especially if it's like but
Canon's like that too. You got to be like either at key or a little over.
Yeah, it's
well, the new ones actually, I just shot with that C80.
Oh yeah, I haven't shot with those yet.
They're not out. They let me keep one for like a month. It was great. I'll send you the shit I shot. Like, it looks.
Oh yeah, I love it.
I love that sensor. Like, I have a C500 that looks awesome. C70, great tool. I think the 500 looks better. I think I've become a full frame guy. I wish I wasn't, but I think
there is something about it. Yeah, I mean, again, it's just like everything else. It's the tool for the job. I'm prepping a indie feature right now at the start in January, where we're debating using the Ronin 4D, which, I mean, I've used it for doc work, but I haven't done it for on a narrative scale before.
Do you see Civil War?
I did. Yeah, I know they used it for a bit of sequences in that. I know they used like the Venice 2 as well. So for like most of the dialogue, and then the action stuff was with the 4D. But we did a camera test with it. We shot with some like a R glass, just to kind of feel it out. That's one of the issues with full frame, is like, especially on a camera like that, you only can use very small lenses on that gimbal system. So that was a fun test. And I mean, this sounds terrible, but with the ability in the DI nowadays, especially for this film, which is mostly black and white, we're more about making sure we retain color. As weird as that sounds, like in black and white, we want to have good color rendition for manipulating in black and white. Right. So we have a gradient of you guys shades.
Well, and I think that's the main reason why I like full frame. Is it has nothing to do with like depth of field or whatever. It's all about the fact that the tonality of a larger sensor, not necessarily full frame and not any manufacturer, but a larger imaging plane gives you smoother tonality between anything. Noise is going to be, especially on film. Film is the obvious, like the bigger it gets, the nicer it looks. But I think digital sensors have come to a point where that mantra still holds, where the larger the sensor generally, those tones are. But have you looked at the? There's got to be one floating around near us. The red monochrome.
We did talk about that. It's also the movement of the 4D is one thing that based off
like
of the
physically
story,
the movement of it.
Yeah, just the ability, the story, without getting too deep into it. There's a kind of a supernatural or ghost element.
Gotcha.
And the director really kind of likes the idea of maybe utilizing that as a floating or constantly moving in the space idea. I mean, we also could do something with like, you know, the Venice and build it out to just the head and a
so
gimbal,
expensive.
But exactly. And so
the Rialto is crazy expensive.
It's a bit too expensive for like a indie feature that I'd rather give us more days,
right,
and let us get it right, or get the crew I want, or get the other necessities that the production needs, then yeah, use that. But yeah, we've been experimenting. We're still trying to figure it out. The monochrome would be an interesting choice.
I don't know any other manufacturers who make that, but the cool thing obviously is that because they've taken away the Bayer pattern or whatever, that goes from like a 4K sensor to like a 20K sensor.
Yeah, it's
every pixel matters.
I remember
cool.
seeing like music videos every time like Red used to introduce the new monochromes.
Yeah, the Justin, I think Suit and Tie was shot on a monochrome.
Yes, I think that one I think everybody saw that. Man,
yeah, it's a great song too. But
oh yeah. I loved the ingenuity when Red was doing stuff like that. Like I hope they get back to it.
I think I was just talking to someone about this last night. I think Nikon buying Red is a net positive for both companies. And I think it'll finally allow, because Red, I mean, the fact that they only sold for like 80 million is crazy. Because I guess they just had to buy out Jim Jannard and be like, hey, like he floated them over the pandemic, I guess. And so they were, this is all hearsay. I don't actually know if this is true. This is just what I heard. But and so they were like, you just got to buy him out. And Nikon obviously had the money, but I think Nikon's always made incredible lenses, obviously incredible now, especially their mirrorless offerings are incredible. The Z8 is like great. There's actually speaking of Sony and I was just reading something about someone brought up the Creator again and the FX3, but there's actually Z8 footage in there.
Oh,
because Gareth Edwards took his Z8 and shot test footage out wherever, and it was good enough that they just put it in the movie.
That's awesome.
And so so they're already there, you know, but I think giving Red the money they need to not only innovate, but not have to come out with something new every 10 seconds. I mean, the Nikon D850, which came out in like 2012, is still seen on the sidelines at sporting events. You know, it's still a crazy good camera. And I think that's
the
kind
Umira
of
is being still used for like NFL films and stuff like that. I mean, and that's the original one, like the 2K one. Sometimes, like they still got a few of those. I talked to a few of the guys in that, and it's going back to Bill Dill. I mean, he always used to tell us something of like, do you want more pixels or do you want better pixels?
Right.
And I think we're at that stage where, like, I mean, you know, we'll always be on the climb up for more and more and more, but I think we're at the stage where we're looking for better pixels. We're looking for that color rendition, that detail, that ability to fill the bucket, so to speak, and give us as much information in post to, if we want to add that grain. I mean, look at how many digital films today are using live grain and things like that just you still can kind of tell, but it's getting close. The happy accidents of film are still there, but
I spent a lot of time. Yeah, I spent a lot of time in Resolve trying to design a compound node that accurately emulates film texture, in the sense that the thing I think a lot of people miss on the lower end, obviously live grain is like incredible, but and then Dehancer's, I like Dehancer's algorithm, but it'll bog down most camera computers, so I just can't. The color on Dehancer, whatever, but the film looks really good. The film grain looks really good. But one thing I've noticed is that on film, and I'm sure you've seen this, it's not that film is soft, but high frequency detail isn't resolved very well unless you get a big ass, you know, IMAX or whatever. So I found out a way to go in and just blur high frequency detail and pass that through so that the grain, it kind of like sticks, and then you blur it and then sharpen it all at the end. So it
interesting,
glues it all together. I'm doing a terrible job of explaining this because I don't know what I did.
I know kind of what you're describing, though. I mean, and also
having to adjust the film in the shadows, mids, and highs, you know, separately, not just texture on.
That's a big one where you notice it. I mean, I think for like if you're doing like a short film or something like that, like just throwing on a stock film grade, especially when it's like you don't know if it's getting into specific festivals, is fine.
Right.
But yeah, it's to emulate it properly. It's a very, very time consuming effort. But you know, uh I love adding grain to anything I can as long as it fits. I love trying to soften things up, but more not like through filtration or I do use vintage glass, but thank God.
I've fallen out of love with filtration.
Yeah, I think a lot of us had that like Black Pro Mist era.
No, everyone, not a lot of us. Yeah. All of us.
Well, it was like everybody was like, it's the secret sauce, and I'm glad we've moved away from that. I still do use filtration, but it's kind of more like color filtration. I love using like antique suede. I will put in like an eighth antique suede into something, and knowing that it's going to be on the warmer side and having a LUT that kind of purposely counters it to give nice rich skin tones, a little bit darker kind of grungy shadows, but also giving us some nice color balance. I
was doing that with my X100. I'd put a warming filter on and then counteract it. Same exact thing. You'd get cool shadows and warm highlights automatically.
Exactly. And it's yeah, I think that's where we should be experimenting. Is like these filtration devices are still around, tobacco and all these other things. It's a little harder sometimes for them to be as impactful on digital, just because I feel like you put it on a film stock and it'll give you the effect you're going for and it's good. You put it on digital and it's like, bam, it's sometimes a little too much. So you got to be really subtle with it. But it's one thing I like to do to play around. That's probably the only filtration I really ever use. Pearlescent sometimes, but
I like a pearlescent. I do enjoy a glimmer glass. Honestly, for the longest time when I was using cheaper cameras, I would use contrast filters just to like roll off and keep things from clipping or
like a white Pro Mist is solid for that.
See, but that was the thing, is I found that the Pro Mists were, for that specific purpose, were too bloomy a lot of times, whereas like a Digicon would still give you some halation a little bit, but it would just keep you from clipping or crushing. Someone asked this on Reddit like 2 days ago. It's not actually giving you any more dynamic range, but it gives you the appearance of more dynamic range because you don't see a clipping point. And I found
it's not just going
valuable. But nowadays I've given them a bunch of shout outs, but there's this plugin for Resolve called Scatter. It's a filtration emulation, and it's excellent. And so I'll just shoot clean, usually with vintage. I like my Nicors. I got these little Nicor pens I really like.
Yeah.
And then I'll just go in and you can pick your filtration, pick your focal length, pick your intensity, and then just A/B it stuff. And then the nice thing about it being a plugin is you can art direct where it goes. So if you're backlit, you can make, window it off and then make that one less strong than the one on the face, or whatever you need to do to keep it from getting too crazy,
Wow.
It's a nice little tool.
You said Scatter?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Eric Messerschmidt turned me on to it.
Oh,
he used it on
I'll have to check it out. That would make sense. Yeah. Because he shot pretty clean for that, but then he added a little bit in post, it looked like.
Yeah, I believe I think all of it potentially, but specifically for the Havana scenes where they wanted it to look hella like muggy.
Yeah. But that's where using effects or using these tools to service the story or push the story is a perfect example of when and where to use it. Not just because it looks cool or it's a good look, but like, what is it helping to enhance the storytelling that you're trying to achieve?
Right. But then the opposite of that is like music videos.
Yes, yeah. When you're doing music videos, it's like fences. Cool. Yeah. Music videos are cool. You push for that, and it's I always enjoy doing. I don't do too many, but I always enjoy doing music videos because it is a time for me to kind of break out of what I'm used to doing with narrative. No, I still love narrative the most.
Right.
It's still a thing that gets me sometimes maybe too passionate, but
Well, it is hard to like, I went from a documentary to an ad to a different documentary to a music video. And by the time I was shooting the second documentary, I was like, my brain was absolutely scrambled. And then by the time I got to the music video, I was thinking too hard. I was like, because I was in narrative brain, and I was like, no, just like have fun. Don't. It's wild that you have, it's the same job, but it absolutely isn't.
Your compositions, your framing could be drastically different. I mean, there may be the idea of short-sighting a shot just for the sake of a cool look or a powerful look is justified. Whereas maybe just doing that on a narrative, it's like, okay, cool, but like, why are you doing that? Like,
right.
Does that really service the story in that moment? Maybe it does, but I think that's the biggest difference between like commercial work and the music videos and then going into narrative, which you're seeing a lot of DPs coming from more of a music video commercial background into narrative. And I think that's why we're getting, in some ways, like really cool, interesting looks that you didn't typically see in narrative. And I love that aspect of it. The part that I always that's a bit of a struggle for me is sometimes it feels, again, like the cinematography can take over a scene or take over a plot point. And I think for me personally, as a cinematographer, you never want it to be outshining the scene. It's okay to supplement or like work with it, but you never want to outshine it.
Yeah. It's like, having a solo in a song where it's not supposed to be.
Yeah.
It's like,
no, I mean,
really
look at me. Yeah. It's, but again, going back to like modern day cinematography politics, I get it. Like, I mean, you see TV shows that honestly probably shouldn't be looking like that, looking really, really slick. And it's like, and sometimes I think it's just because we all are trying to make our imprint.
Well, and on top of that, it used to be, now granted, I didn't work during the time I'm about to basically pull out of my ass, but it does feel like it used to be, you'd get hired off of, obviously your like relationships and stuff like that, but it was kind of like they do good work, they're good to work with, blah, blah, blah. Now you have to have an Instagram, right? You got it. So I think there's people who I'm certainly noticing that I need to do this because I'm one of those idiots who's like, no, people will just like me for me. You got to advertise. I think like the fact that we now have to advertise ourselves as DPs is frustrating because, as you're saying, you don't want to stand out for the film, but you need to stand out to get the next job.
Yeah.
And that's very difficult beyond just shooting your own, some stuff for yourself that looks really cool that you can put up there.
Yeah. And I mean, that's why I'm very blessed that the narrative projects I do, they're all pretty much reoccurring directors or directors that have been referred to me through a mutual friend. And so that trust is there. The trust of not doing something just for the sake of the reel or a cool shot. It's okay, this is to serve the story. This is what's needed in that moment. I don't need to, have a huge lighting rig or camera movement for this scene. That's just, it's 5/8 of a page and it's quick and we need to get in, get out and shoot the shots that best serve the story.
So on the other side of that, why do a 10-minute oneer?
Yeah, right. I mean, so that was already pre-developed by our director Mo. When I originally came into the shoot, I hopped on, funny enough, through it, where Instagram was really helpful. It was about a week and a half before principal photography, and the original main unit DP, his name's Alejandro Chavez, extremely talented DP. We had liked each other over Instagram. We had never met, but he hit me up, slid into my DMs and was like, hey, I got a feature shooting in about a week and a half. You want to come on and be my second unit DP and be cam op on main unit? And I was like, yeah, hell, I really admired its work. And I got in there, and on the first day of prep, I met Mo, and immediately they was talking about the 10-minute Warner chase sequence. And it was funny because we literally did hit the ground running because those were our first days of the shoot.
Good.
Yeah. Yeah. So there was a lot of growing pains, obviously, like, the Teradek arrays, like covering blocks of the fashion district in Los Angeles.
Teradek got their hold on this industry. They're so unreliable.
They are not as ideal as they could be. I mean, when we shot these scenes, it was at the end of 2018 too. So the arrays were not quite as
they've certainly gotten better.
Yeah, but we had multiple spread out, and even then it was a challenge for our focus pullers because you're going in and out of buildings. But yeah, I mean, Mo had already pretty much spent quite a while pre-shooting almost the entire film on his iPhone. And it didn't necessarily, it's not 100% picture for picture.
Like it's a storyboard kind of.
Yeah, it's like a beautiful template. Animatic, yeah, in a way. It's a blueprint of knowing, especially for a chase sequence where, I mean, in those 10-ish minutes, there's probably almost a dozen or 7 or 8 cuts. And so having to plan out each wipe, each transition point, each whip pan, the timing of the whip pans to capture that beat, but quickly do a 180 and continue running to follow the lead. All that was predetermined by Mo. Now, it took time, though, to transition that from shooting on an iPhone and the freedom of an iPhone to an Alexa Mini with Master Primes, even with a really stripped down kit. It was a workout.
I was second unit on a film a few years ago, and we had the big ass, like the long Atlas anamorphics, like the Orions, but they weren't the shorties. They were like, and I was just, and the same thing with the Mini, and all I had was like the cage and the handle, and everything's handheld, and I was like, I love Dan Kane's. This lens is too heavy.
Yeah. I mean, and that was day one. We got in there, and Alejandro shows me how, because I came from a background and I came from a background when we operate handheld. Typically, it's on my shoulder. I was a swimmer growing up, so I had pretty broad shoulders, and I'm short too, so low center of gravity. Yeah. I still love opping off my shoulder, but Alejandro had just come off Roma with Corona, and he was cradling.
Yeah.
And really encouraged me to do the same, not only because we were jumping back and forth where he would do a take, rest, then I would do a take, and we would be going back and forth. So you wanted to have that continuity, but it taught me a lot. It taught me a lot of operating that way. And to this day, I love, mixing it up and sometimes doing that. We didn't have easy rigs. It was just all straight. Keep the camera package as tight as possible. That Teradek was bolted down. We used like the slimmest batteries we could. And streamline package. I think we got rid of like some of the like cage support on the sides just to try to keep it as tiny as possible. And it was a good workout. But there was something about it. It was a lot of fun.
I don't know why Ari didn't put a V-Lock or gold mount, probably swappable mount on the camera. When you get those cages, usually I guess it's the wooden camera, whoever makes it's Ari makes their own, but the battery sled is so far back.
Oh yeah,
the camera's this big, and then suddenly it's 2 feet long because of the cage and the battery.
I think we had the Tilta one, so we were able to like kind of smush it up against. Yeah. But even then, I mean, it's better, but the biggest thing was when you did throw it on your shoulder, I was always having my ACs add weight to the back.
So
add a 702 or like what were those monitors used in the late 2010s?
Odyssey 7Q Plus.
Like the Odysseys was it the Marshalls? Is it Marshall?
Oh sure, yeah.
I forget the brand.
TD Logic,
or TV Logic. There we go. It was TV Logic. They were thick guys. They were, and so we would sometimes just throw those with a Noga arm with a gold mount or something on the back just to give me the balance with the Master Primes when I was resting it on my shoulder. So it was a nice equilibrium. But I mean, Mo's blueprint was really helpful. He even with the interior, most of the film he had already pre-shot. Now that didn't mean that Mo wasn't open to conversation. He wasn't open to new ideas. He was 100% open for that as long as it served the essence of what he was trying to tell in the story.
Right.
But you very quickly understood what Mo did and didn't like.
Yeah, I think that's honestly one of the harder things for DPs starting out to realize is like, you are not the protagonist.
Yeah.
You know, images are so prevalent in our society now with everything, you know, social media and just anything. Visual media is everywhere. And as you being the person who makes it, I should be in charge. It's like, nope, you are a plumber. and your director is the client.
Exactly. I mean, it's a collaboration, hopefully at best. And but that was the biggest challenge for me when I transitioned to the main unit DP, because we came back to do reshoots, and it was
right because you guys shot it. You started in 2018, and then big ass COVID break, and then came back in whatever 20.
Yeah, most of the film had been shot.
Okay.
But we came back in 21, late 20 maybe. My dates are the further away it gets. It was a journey to get this film released. But by that point, Mo asked me to come back and take over main unit, and that's always a challenge within itself, is because you want to be as consistent to the look that's already been established. Luckily, I was on for a large portion of the main unit before that, so I already knew kind of the lighting, the ethics of like, or the style of what we were trying to go with.
Right.
But with time comes like new outlooks on how to tell a story, and so that was something to balance with Mo, is obviously servicing the continuity of the look that was already established in what we shot, but also being open to the new ideas that at the end of the day is still your boss, Mo, wanting to try out. And so you just walk that tightrope. But at the end of the day, I think it turned out well. But it was definitely probably one of the hardest moments of the production, was walking that tightrope of being respecting Alejandro's work on the film while also doing the changes that Mo was seeking.
Yeah. And then you also, didn't you have like a massive like SWAT raid sequence that you had?
Oh man, that was so much fun. We had like 30, 40 extras, all in either police uniforms, SWAT gear, different personnel, all head to toe. We had a full-on like armored SWAT vehicle, 4 or 5 police chase vehicles. It was crazy because like obviously we were prepping it during the day. We had like the cars on the road, and we're like the little toy cars, and we're like, okay, so this cop car is gonna go here and it's gonna move in faster. You got to push in, and we had to time that. I was the one operating that specific shot, and it had to be done safely. But we wanted the camera moving in at the same time as the police cars moving in and stopping, and I continually move in up into the cop getting out of the car and running out of the shot. Running at a car that's moving towards you can be, it has to be precise. And so there was, especially when it's, once we got past the daytime and it's at night.
Got to wear your brown pants on that day.
Oh man, it was, we were, yeah, it was a rush of adrenaline. But it was a lot of fun too, because so much to logistically try to capture. And then, I mean, obviously in the entire sequence of the film, it's interplaying between what's happening on the exterior of the raid, which we shot in Los Angeles, the exteriors in Los Angeles, and then the interiors were shot in Mexico City.
That seems backwards. Oh no, I guess it's set. I guess it's set in.
Yeah, all the interiors, the whole house was the interiors of the house. That house was a practical location in Mexico City that Mo had pretty much found, and then really kind of envisioned it with the art direction. So all those walls and the details, the burnt walls and the texture, that was all Mo. I mean, he really saw the project and the film in his head, and made sure to communicate how it was supposed to look. Sometimes getting his hands in and literally just shaping it himself because he saw it. And then when we came back, like shooting green screen based off of plates to add more characters into the raid scene. And so it was a lot to like try to merge together, from 3 to 4 separate locations over a span of like 3 years,
right,
with slightly different lighting and color, and to bring it all into the DI and match it. Luckily, our colorist, Oyvind, he was fantastic. I mean, we spent a lot of time on those scenes, making sure the rotos and everything were right. But yeah, I mean, it had to be right. It's the culmination of like the climax of the film. You had to, if there was like a weird roto move or the colors fell off or one clip, it takes the audience out of it in such an intense moment. So that was something we really put a lot of effort and time into, making sure it was just right.
It's so annoying how one GoPro shot or whatever immediately makes people think like every film is held to the standard of its worst shot by the audience.
Yeah.
You know,
I mean, it goes for the cinematography needs to kind of blend with what you're trying to tell narratively. I mean, obviously on a film like this, City of Dreams, there is a lot of movement, a lot of intensity. It has its idea of not stylized, but it has a style to it. But I mean, I'm speaking for myself here and the team, but I feel like it still maintains it's trying to evoke in the story.
Right.
And it comes from a purpose. And that's always what you got to do. But it can be hard. It can be hard. Luckily, most Blueprint was really helpful in that regard, because sometimes when you were kind of lost, you could resort to that to know, well, this is at least a template. Let's go from this, and how do we enhance it to the now practical day location?
Yeah, and it's always so freeing to have the people in charge know exactly what they want. Even if like I don't agree with it, I would rather they tell me exactly what they want than a lot of wishy-washy, like, oh, I don't know, just show me something. Like, oh,
yeah. Sometimes, I mean, and there's sometimes that's okay too. I mean, I work with some directors that are more directors, where they have
I'm fine with that. I mean, when they don't even have like an idea, they're just sitting there with their arms crossed going, what do you think? And not like it for this one, just all the time, you know?
Yeah. No, you
base.
Definitely, I would say most of the time you want to have somebody that has a general vision for the film, but also people that typically are flexible to the practicalities of a location and what's available on the day. I mean, some happy accidents, or maybe not happy, but accidents happen, and you kind of have to roll with the punches sometimes. I mean, we were blessed on that chase sequence of like, it was like a 4 or 5 days of shooting that. And we were lucky that we shot it around this time of year in October. And luckily in LA this time of year, it's foggy, it's cloudy for the first maybe 6-7 hours of daylight. So that helped us maintain a continuity. But if we would have had hard shadows, I mean, that would have made our jobs a lot more tricky to intercut multiple days of a chase sequence that's supposed to be happening within a 5-10 minute span. You get lucky sometimes.
Yeah, I gotta say, the like 100-hour days whiplash into fog time, like with only a week in between, has been jarring.
Yeah,
I keep thinking I'm like waking up early. I'm like, oh my god, it's only 4, and then I look at the clock, it's like 9:30. I'm like, what?
Yeah. It's why you see more night film shot at this time of the year and more day film shot, or things that are involving day exteriors, or a lot of daylight involved shooting in the summer, especially on the indie level, because you want to maximize the time you have, either light or dark. I think when I first got in, I was always amazed with how many horror films were shot right around Halloween and Christmas and stuff like that. And I was like, is it just people are starting to get in the mood? Like, is it the time of year? And it's like, no, they have 12, almost 12 hours of darkness where they don't have to throw up solids or trash bags over the windows or like whatever else to black it out, like, or build tents. Like they have that practically. But yeah, it's I'm adjusting right now. I don't know when the time changes. I assume it's coming up pretty soon.
Oh, I have no idea. Dude, I lived in Arizona for like 8 years, and I didn't love it. But moving back to LA, I had forgotten that, because Arizona doesn't do time changes. And I got so used to it And then I moved back here, and then one day I was like behind, and I was like, wait, hold on.
Yeah, it always trips me up like right when we get near Christmas and it's like 4:30 and it's just pitch black out.
Yeah,
it's nice to see the Christmas lights, but it trips me up. It's like, should I be thinking about dinner at 4 o'clock in the afternoon?
Yeah,
like it's just a little too early.
My whole life I loved nighttime for whatever reason, just a night person. So when it would get, when winter would roll around, I got excited. Probably also because like I lived in the Bay Area, and winter in the Bay Area, San Francisco, it's just like feels right, but in the past couple years, I've definitely become the sun person now, where I'm like, when we do get nighttime at 4:30, I'm like, fuck.
Yeah. I mean,
it used to make me excited, maybe because I just liked going out, and it's easier to convince people we should go out. It's 5 o'clock. Yeah, let's go.
Yeah. Oh yeah. That's why summer in LA is so much fun. You're so many stuff to do. But once it gets dark out, you notice like in the winter, like less and less people are interested in LA going out at night. We're fickle people.
Yeah. We're a fickle bunch.
Yeah.
Well, I've kept you a little over, but
you're fine.
That hour fucking flew by.
Oh yeah, man. No, I was having a blast. Well, hey man, it was a pleasure. I really appreciate it, and hopefully I got some more stuff to chat about in the future.
Absolutely, I look forward to it.
Cool, man. Take care. Peace.
Take care, brother.
Frame and Reference is an Owlbot production. It's produced and edited by me, Kenny McMillan, and distributed by Pro Video Coalition. If you'd like to support the podcast directly, you can do so on Patreon by going to frameandrefpod.com, where you can get all the episodes, and clicking the Patreon button. It's always appreciated, and as always, thanks for listening.